Now, joining me now in studio is Brigadier General in Reserves Relik Shafir, former commander of Tel Nof Air Base and former combat pilot with the Israeli Air Force. Thank you so much for joining us as we're sitting here in the studio in Paris, France right now. There's another Israeli delegation talking about possibly hostage negotiations. We're day 140 that 134 hostages have been held in Hamas in Gaza at the hands of Hamas. People are saying they're optimistic about these talks, but what could realistically change?
I think there's a lot of experience that we have in history about dealing with terrorists. Bader Meinhof in Germany, the Red Brigades in Italy, all kinds of terrorists and some clans in South America. It's always what we call in football at the 90th minute and beyond, where each side is trying to gain as much as possible. Now, each side is the other side close to being broken? Is Hamas close to being broken to the effect that it cannot withhold anymore? Are the Israelis under pressure? Obviously, each side is trying to pull as much as he can towards the end. I think Israel feels that Hamas is with its back to the wall. It has no outing. The Han Yunis is getting close to a finish in the sense that Hamas no longer has an army and where to hide. The Rafah area, Hamas brigades are not as good as the ones in Han Yunis, and the pressures on Hamas to cave in are huge, less so than the Israelis. So the Israelis can come to Paris with more patience, I would say, and more cards in our hands than Hamas does. Whether it'll materialize before Ramadan or not is really a question of how hard are the Hamas pressured. I wouldn't bet on it. Nobody knows what will happen. But this is what takes place in these kinds of negotiations.
And as this continues, they're not only being pressured militarily by the Israeli Defense Forces. Now we've also seen throughout the past week more pressure maybe from their own civilians. We've seen some protests in Gaza from Palestinians protesting against Hamas.
Yes, and the more the locals will feel that Hamas is losing ground and disappears from the area, maybe its operatives are going around in civilian clothes with no weapons, the more it understands that they can go out, demonstrate, and put pressure on Hamas to cave in. Just like the way that they're looking at the pressures that the Israelis are putting on the government. So it's not sure that what we see from here in Gaza is what they see themselves doing. But obviously, as we see, the game is that Hamas is getting close to caving in, and Israelis, including the public, are going nowhere in Gaza in the sense that they will complete the mission. So I think we have to grit our teeth and, bite the bullet, so to speak, and wait for the clock to strike 12 when the game will be over.
It certainly does seem everything is pushing up against this supposed deadline right before Ramadan. But if and when Israel does proceed with their operation in Rafah, despite the talks that are happening now, and that does seem to be delaying the operation a bit, what might we expect as far as a strategic or tactical mission when it goes to that? Because we still will likely see not only the Palestinian civilians there, which pose a security risk for the IDF operating, but also the hostages. That makes this mission that much more complicated.
Well, in a way, you could see the reverse. The more Hamas is under pressure, the more the hostages are their lifeguards. So they will guard them, I would say, to the last minute, because this is the way for them to get out of this alive, maybe an exit to Egypt or other types of arrangements. So I think Israel will not want to push too hard on Rafah. move the civilians a little bit to the side to areas where we know that the entrance to the shafts of the underground tunnels are there, and have a precision or surgical treatment of that area rather than take over the whole area and be among the masses of the 1.3 million in that small piece of land.
If we do see a pause in the fighting, some sort of a deal happening, let's say by Ramadan, how might that impact an already turbulent time here in Israel? Maybe on the northern front, on the front with the West Bank. Usually during Ramadan, this is a time with quite a bit of tensions when it comes to the West Bank.
Yes, that is true. But if there is some kind of a truce in Gaza, even for a month, for the deal, it'll surely pacify Hezbollah, who've already said that they will stop anything once the war in Gaza halts. They will halt as well. And the same will probably happen in the West Bank. And perhaps the Israeli government will be clever enough to let more Israeli Arabs into the Al-Aqsa area, and this may pacify the area a little bit. And I think everybody's tired. And as one lawyer once said to me, a good deal is where both sides are equally dissatisfied.
Certainly the case with a lot of the things on the table right now. I want to talk about an incident that happened in the West Bank yesterday, a Jenin drone strike, which killed a PIJ member on his way to carry out another attack, according to the IDF. And so this use of the Air Force in the West Bank, this is something that used to be very rare. We've seen it more frequently in the past few weeks, few even months now. Why now are we seeing more use of the Air Force when it comes to the front in the West Bank?
Well, at the time, the idea of using drones, unmanned vehicles to hit terrorists was seen as an escalation that may invite escalations on the other side. So the IDF refrained from using that, and it also shows in normal times a sign of weakness that we don't want to go in with soldiers. So we're hitting from the ground. So we're not really showing force on the ground. But in these troubled times where we are, all these small tactical ideas and restraints have gone away. And this is a time to actually counter any terrorist activities that we can in the West Bank. And there's no lack of will on Hamas's side, mainly in the West Bank, to partake with the Gaza warfare. And so the fact that there have been so few incidents is certainly something commendable to the Israeli security forces.
The use of drones also seems to be more prevalent in all of the different arenas, not just in the West Bank, as you said, also on the northern front. This is a type of warfare we are continuing to see being used, it seems, at least on a weekly basis, almost daily basis, especially drones fired from the Iranian-backed Hezbollah terror group. We saw 2 of them. They claimed responsibility, 2 fired today towards northern Israel. So is this the type of warfare that we should expect to see going forward?
Well, we should, this is a good time to mention that Israel had used drones from 1982 on a regular basis. So we're talking over 40 years now. And for many years, we had the initiative on that part, but now it's prevalent all over the world, including Ukraine and Russia. And this is what the warfare will look like. Also, a lot of electronic warfare to blank what the data is sent by those drones, maybe even to steal them by taking over their command and controls. There's a lot more that will happen in that area of war. One thing that we can say, though, those drones do not carry a lot of munition, so the damage that they can inflict is limited.
You certainly go into our next topic here, just talking about the ongoing wars happening around the region. For now, Brigadier General in Reserves Israel Relik Shafir, thank you so much for being here, unpacking the latest war developments, day 140 here in Israel.